Hey everybody, what is going on? This is Scott Garber back in the saddle of the Profluent Sports Podcast, where we are highlighting founders, investors, executives across the sports landscape. Today, we're excited to welcome our next guest, Head of Strategic Partnerships at PickleTile, former commissioner of the MLP, and really just all things pickleball. Welcome to the show, Brooks Wiley. Brooks, my man, how we doing today?
I'm well, Scott. Beautiful day here in Austin, Texas.
Man,
happy to be chatting with you again.
Oh, it's so exciting, man. And I mean, Brooks, it is, the sport asset class is going crazy. And if there's one thing that's gone even more wildfire, I think it's been pickleball. So I'm so excited to, really dive in. There's few folks that have been at the foundation of this crazy ride that we've been on, and you're one of them. So look at Brooks, it's not my story to tell. So give the listeners a little context to who you are and what that on-ramp into the pickleball explosion was like for you.
Yeah, live here in Austin, Texas. I'm one of the 3 people here in Austin that can say they're a sort of native of Austin.
The unicorn.
Yeah. Did not move here from California. Came back from California, but went to high school here at Westlake High School. Went to Austin. Went to the University of Texas at Austin. I'm a diehard Longhorn. Have been to many of the games. Still watch the games weekly with my son. Super special thing for me to do. Yeah, my journey starts. I was in a home poker game. I was in, I think, 18. Just sold a business at the time. Was like trying to figure out what to do. And my friend was talking about. He's like, "There's this weird sport called pickleball, and I know this guy who was a hedge fund guy, and he's going to open this place in Austin, and it's like this place in Kansas City called Chicken and Pickle." And it's like this family fun center, restaurant, food and beverage place that has this sport called pickleball. And it's kind of like tennis, kind of like ping pong. And I'd never heard of it at the time. And I grew up playing every single sport under the sun, my entire life. From the time before I could walk, I had a ball in my hand. Something about that was like, this sounds like something maybe cool that Austin would like. Literally looked it up on YouTube that night and bought a paddle the next day. Went to my local Cedar Park Rec Center here in the suburbs of Austin, and they had open play. And I get there, and I'm like the youngest person at, age 47 in the whole place. But it's like packed full of people, started playing it and like instantly fell in love and started playing 5 days a week, and then started sort of investigating, the business aspect of it, even to where I had a realtor looking at properties in San Antonio and Austin. I'm always kind of person like tinkering, building things like how can I, just things that are interesting me. I bought 1,000 balls from China to look at starting a ball company, started looking at the real estate, market for that facility. And then just started meeting people in the Austin pickleball community. I think that's one of if you hear anybody say why pickleball has exploded, I think honestly, truly the community and the people you meet, some of those people that I've met then were, became business partners, friends that I still have, 5-6 years later where, we go to each other's birthday parties and they come to your kids' things and you travel together, even things that are outside of pickleball. So just started meeting that community. Through that community, met a gentleman by the name of Steve Kuhn, who was actually the person referenced in the poker story by my other friend, just completely unrelated. Met him, we became friends. And then he was opening a facility called Dreamland in Austin, Texas.
Yep.
Which was, again, family fun center. Pickleball had the most insane mini golf course you've ever played in your life. Met him, became friends, and then, that sort of kicked off both Duper and Major League Pickleball in the same year, early 2021.
And all of this while there's a global pandemic. The world is trying to figure out, how do we participate in sport? And, right, so we always say it was sort of this, perfect place, perfect time for the sport to just absolutely accelerate. And, we're going to continue to build on this, but community just continues to be the through line, Brooks. It's what we crave. And Pickle did a great job of bringing together not just the geriatric community, but we figured out, hey, there is a huge demand with a lower barrier of entry to start to get into this game. Which came first? Was it Duper? Was it the league? How did you guys, start to think about those as you were building in 21?
Yeah, the COVID thing is definitely interesting because that was basically as people started being comfortable sort of coming out of their house in COVID, me and my pickleball partner at the same time, we would practice by ourselves. And then maybe a month later, there'd be 2 other people were hey, do you want to meet? They felt comfortable, let's have 4 of us play. And then maybe another month later, as you're going through 2020, let's have 8 of us play. And that's where I met Steve. 8 of us would go get up super early in the morning and go play at the public park where they had taken down the basketball courts. By the way, they literally had like taken the hoop off the basketball court at the public court in Austin.
Wow.
But the pickleball lines were there, and so we would go and play. And that was the genesis of it. But so like basically it was Dreamland started during the middle of COVID. We opened basically like early 2021. And then at the same time, when we were starting Dreamland, Steve came to me and said, I want to start this company called Duper. We were big in the pickleball tournament space, like, starting to get good. We realized that there was a better mousetrap than the existing ratings. We sort of looked at UTR as the model for basically building a technology company around pickleball ratings, where, again, to bring people together. So you'd have people, like if you're traveling someplace, if I'm traveling to Tampa, I know that I can find people that are my skill level, or I can look somebody up and find competition that's, in my same level. So Duper started January of 2021. We signed a partnership with the PPA Tour very early in 2021, started building the app. And then I started going out on the road basically to all the PPA Tour events, meeting the pros. We had a couple of the big name pros like Ben Johns as a, sponsored, who were spreading the word for Duper. Started going out, just meeting players, signing up people. Spent that entire first year basically doing that at about eight different events where there's 1,000, 2,000 people at all these pickleball events. And then because that was not enough stuff to do in the middle of the year, Steve, who also is just, a brilliant idea guy, said, I want to start this team league. I think I have enough people to, have some investors who want to start a pickleball league and have owners. Let's start this. And then, we started that about mid 2021 as well.
Wow.
And had the first event. Like basically we launched it, started the brand like May, launched it, I think September 1st, had the first draft October 1st in partnership with the PPA in Rockwall, Texas, and then had the first event basically like the first week of November. So within 3 to 4 months, like basically started a professional league at the same time of, trying to build Duper.
Holy smokes, right? I think that, commercially we see it, and, the MLP had a lot of attention, in the way that you guys came to market. I think it's always very interesting to understand the true journey of what was going on behind the scenes while all this was going on. Brooks, talk to us. We're seeing so many challenger leagues pop up right now. We're watching so many emerging leagues. As you reflect back on the journey, we won't go into all the details, but I am curious, like for folks that are building now, that have this ambition of building a league, based on your experience, what nuggets of advice would you give, one that worked for you guys, and lessons that you learned if you were to go do it again that you would apply to building a league today?
Wow, that's a deep question.
And here's the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I could talk for 45 minutes, I think. Lessons learned, I think, there's always another shiny opportunity within that context of like, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And really trying to have like a North Star, or like, these are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that are the most important to us. And a person that I used to work for, Brian Levine, used to say he would do this forward induction thing, or a friend of mine here locally does it. If you were to pop champagne bottles a year from now or 5 years from now, what does this look like, right? You start from what is the vision? Like if we're super happy with the result, and what does that look like a year from now or 5 years from now? And then how do you back into that and build those tiny steps and those priorities to get there? And then obviously, and there's also, Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
And I think MLP was punched in the mouth multiple times. And then, you have that North Star, but at the same time, you have to be able to like pivot or be flexible to, change directions if you need to.
I think, I think at a high level, it makes a ton of sense, right? And there's a ton of great ideas. I think navigating a landscape, especially when you're trying to pioneer a new league, right? You're bringing in different owners, you're bringing in different capital stacks, you're bringing in different egos that I think sometimes can be challenging, that sometimes drift us away, right? And so I think one of my biggest lessons as we get to talk to folks that are the infancy of building is not all money is created equal, right? And so I'm curious, one question just to go a layer deeper, and then we'll carry on with the conversation, right? But, structurally, there's a couple different ways that we could think about building leagues, right? There's single ownership models, there's franchise models. I'm curious, what were some of the early discussions that you guys had around how do we, shape this in a way that is ultimately going to put, or bring the vision to life?
Yeah, I think there was definitely some internal tension, and I think it ultimately affected the decisions that were made ultimately affected the outcome for the league, which was like, how fast do you grow? Like, we started with 8 teams at a certain dollar amount. I won't say what those were. And then, within a year, that dollar amount was, 30x. Within a year after that, it was 60x, something like the original.
Wow.
And I think there were at times people, I wouldn't say conflict, but disagreements, or in terms of like what was the vision on how fast you should grow. And some people might look back and say like you grew too fast. To be honest, there were needs that like you needed capital to come in, like, because running a sports league and running, not only paying professional athletes, but we were trying to professionalize the sport and take it to a next level. And I think we did a great job of that. But at the same time, running events when you have to like build temporary stands and you have professionals, like internal professionals, like running an event and travel and all that, like it's very, very, very expensive to run events. You're talking $1 million plus per 4-day event.
Wow.
So
wow.
It's basically, it was hard to balance the capital needs with like not growing too fast. And I think the growth that did happen at some point did affect future investment that was needed, and in like what became the structure of the mergers that happened later on.
Interesting. Super cool. It's a great little glimpse into how it was built. I'm curious, Brooks, like through your career, there's the entrepreneurial spirit, but there's also the strategic partnership side, right? And, as we look at leagues as they come off the ground, we're building this IP to ultimately rent to a media company, but there's such a community element around pickleball. Did you guys always sort of have this North Star of we wanted to get a large TV contract and, sort of take the traditional approach there? Did you ever think about owning the audience and distributing through some of the personalities? Just curious how you guys thought about it from a media distribution side.
Yeah, I think that was always the plan. And I think for the businesses to exist, that definitely has to happen. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are bearish pickleball as a professional sport, and it remains to be seen whether that happens. I think that was definitely a North Star that, in order to justify player salaries, all of those expenses that we talked about, operational expenses, the team that is required in the back end to run a professional sports league, like I don't think that just sponsorship money alone is enough to sustain that. Yeah. So from the very first event, like Major League Pickleball, the very first Major League Pickleball event was broadcast on CBS Sports. That was, at the time, very old school broadcast style. And we actually had to pay for that airtime. And some of the,
wow.
I think, I don't know this for sure, but to this day, some of it is still paid airtime, whether it's on Fox or CBS or Amazon or whatever, But in order for the long-term economics to make sense, I think let's call it TV deal is definitely necessary. Now there could an argument can be made, like, do we go streaming all in-house and then figure out ways to monetize that? Whether it's like, I think Pickleball TV does that now, where they have like a subscription model. So I think, again, arguments could be made on both sides, but media, like monetizing that IP and that content is, the most important thing to make it profitable, whether it's streaming or old school broadcast. And I think streaming is probably, my opinion, like a little bit more the future.
Love it, man. I think it's super interesting. And, I think there's a lot that we can learn from what you guys have done and ultimately where it's going, right? And so Brooks, talk to me now, right? Like, you've sat in the middle of what's going on in the pickleball world. You've seen it from a couple different lenses. Where do you see the space going as we continue to, expand the sport?
I think you and I talked about this a little bit before. I'm still like incredibly bullish the amateur growth of the sport, both nationally and internationally. It's starting to pop up in high schools. I think the Arizona Pickleball, some people down there doing it. I talked to a concrete contractor that we work with at PickleTile last week, who said that they're getting a ton of requests to resurface tennis courts in high schools in Florida. So I think that's growing. Obviously, like the growth of it in Vietnam, China, you've seen some big events there. I think at some point very, very soon, will probably be the largest participation sport in the United States and overtake soccer.
Really?
Yeah. I don't remember those numbers off the top of my head, but I would not doubt if it's, anything that continues exponential growth at a 10 to 15% rate. People hear 10%, they think that doesn't mean anything. But when you do 10% year over year, like the compound effect of that, people underestimate what that looks like.
It's super exciting, Brooks, right? And now talk to me, like, I mean, we see a couple different pockets, right? And I think this is going to move into PickleTile where you're sitting now, right? And like, we've talked so much about the technology side. We've talked so much about sort of the league side. Now let's talk infrastructure, right? And so like, I mean, I think one of the things that we heard on our side was, hey, there's a ton of municipalities where, we can convert these old basketball courts or tennis courts and we can make them into pickle. Talk to us about where you see opportunities on the infrastructure side to meet the demand of where the space is going, and how that sort of ties into what you're, focused on in your role today.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think one thing, and this is one thing that PickleTile, PickleTile is the official court builder for USA Pickleball. That's been a great partnership for us. One of the things that sets PickleTile apart are our products, Pickle Glass and Infinity Glass, which have best-in-class sound mitigation and wind mitigation. So, obviously anything from like HBO Sports did this kind of puff piece about pickleball and the noise, but you hear noise complaints. There's literally a Facebook group of people that their sole job in life, or that they spend their time on, is trying to get pickleball clubs shut down because of noise complaints. It doesn't matter where they are. There's like not somebody.
It's a real thing. I mean, It's a real thing. Real quick aside. We saw this. Do you think they'll ever make an iteration to the ball? We saw like the quiet ball come out. Like, do you think that you'll start to see iterations within the sport to meet that, or this is just what it is?
I think I saw somebody actually hit one where it's like a 3D printed ball. It looks like this like matrix looking thing. I don't know how to explain it, but that it is quiet. I think you will see some innovation around that, especially around sort of recreational pickleball. The problem from a professional standpoint or a high level, especially with how fast the game is now, and like given the paddle technology and the ball technology, is that sound is actually a pretty important part of the like meta of the game. Like you hear the ball, and if you don't hear the ball off of the other person's paddle, sometimes when these pros have like absurd hand speed, and that's like one of the most exciting parts of the game is seeing these hand battles, the ball going back and forth super fast. If you don't hear that audio cue, like that affects the speed at which you can react.
Interesting.
So, again, from if you're in your local HOA community and like, quiet paddles are a thing, quiet balls are a thing, it probably will become a thing for, at certain places. And again, our Pickle Glass products are, these incredibly beautiful, like glass and steel fencing products that have a 50% reduction in sound quality. So like, our goal is we're building this infrastructure is we're trying to get into HOAs, we're trying to get into municipalities, and we're seeing, even city park projects are speccing it out to make sure that, they don't have the headaches later on. A lot of them say like, oh, we don't need it now. And they put up a chain link fence, and then the pitchforks come out when the courts are built, and then they end up tearing that stuff down and having to put in Pickle Glass or down the line.
No, it's really cool. And, sitting on our side of the fence, it's always curious, like how do you build business within the sport of pickle, right? And I think it sits in sort of a unique category. And like, because the barrier to entry is quite low, we've watched multiple iterations. The Chicken and Pickle franchise has done fantastic, right? But it's hard to scale some of these when it's like, hey, I can go to my I can go in my community, or I can go to my rec park and play. So I think it's really neat just to learn about the different business units. Brooks, I got to bring this up. I'm always curious, right? Pickle's gone on this absolutely generational run, and now Padel has come into the world, right? And so do you see a world where they coexist? We watch, Padel be more of a lifestyle club, higher end. Do you think Pickle's going to start to adopt that? Curious how you see sort of these two emerging racket sports either feeding off each other, competitive. How do you see the markets evolving there?
Yeah. This is a really good question. Like, I now play paddle 3 times a week to my one time I'm playing pickleball. So I love to see the rise of paddle. I don't think it will ever, this is my 2 cents, I don't think it will ever grow at the rate of pickleball just because of the accessibility and the cost of it. It's pretty expensive to play. For me, it's just a little bit more interesting at this point in my recreational sports career. But I think definitely the pickleball to paddle transition, I've seen, like, we have a WhatsApp group that a local group of, pretty high level pickleball players started. And that group grew from 0 to 100 in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And we have an open play now at one of the local places, which is on a Friday night, which is something that helped grow pickleball, is that sort of open play concept that paddle typically doesn't have at a lot of clubs. So it's good to see that transition from pickleball to paddle. The transition from paddle to pickleball remains to be seen. And honestly, I don't know how much of that's going to happen. Hopefully, if they're in the same place, maybe people will be interested in it. But I feel like the people that are hardcore paddle, I don't know, still overcoming that, the I don't know, stigma isn't a bad word, but like the view of pickleball, I think is still a little bit of an uphill battle.
Absolutely. It's very interesting. I mean, it's almost taboo to put them in the same sentence.
Yeah.
But I think it is quite interesting to watch the evolution of the racket space, and how I think we can learn lessons from each one. I'd be remiss without asking, right? As we look at the growth of Padel, right? One of the challenges that the sport faces is meeting other folks at your skill level. So you have these big clubs, but it's how do I go meet and 3 other people that I can now play a game with, right? Mm-hmm. So when you guys were building Duper and saw these opportunities, like, do you see other opportunities sort of drafting off of your legacy experience as the racket sport space continues to expand, or are you just now solely focused on like the infrastructure side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working a little bit in part-time on helping somebody that's working in that space, but at this point, mostly just focused on the infrastructure. It's definitely something that is super interesting to me, but like the stats, and I think AI is going to become a huge part of both pickleball and paddle. So interested to see where that market goes. There are, there's some very large companies, both in, Duper has a very large market share, Playtomic and Padel. So it'll be interesting to see how those markets shape out. Again, it's personally interesting to me enough that I pay attention to it and spend a little bit of time. But, right now the day job is the focus in trying to build out the infrastructure and these products.
Super cool, man. So as we start to turn the corner here, right, you've played, you've built, you now participate in a myriad of ways. Brooks, how do you stay sharp, right? What are you reading, listening to? Who in the pickleball space should we be keeping an eye on if we want to become more entrenched in where the ecosystem is going?
Yeah, I voraciously read. I read Twitter a lot, or X still. The pickleball community on X is still growing, but I think there's a hardcore group of people there that are just love the sport and want to see it grow, are really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably where I get the most of my, like, I don't pay attention to the news at all. Like, yeah. I read X, follow LinkedIn a little bit as well. It's just, there are people building stuff in Nicaragua, and yeah.
And I think it's a great way to bring us home, right? Because I mean, so much, the community is pretty centralized. There's some great publications out there. There's some great applications, but it seems like North America has really spearheaded the pickle game, right? Now, do you see the global expansion as we continue to zoom out? You touch on Nicaragua there. Mm-hmm. What is it like over in the UK, in Asia? Are we watching the growth of the game internationally? And I imagine that dovetails into, what you're working on in your day-to-day job. Curious, sort of as we look outwards, where you see, some opportunity of where the space is growing.
Yeah, I mean, for PickleTile, we've had some people reach out to us and actively negotiating some partnerships in Europe, the Netherlands, and some of the surrounding areas. I know there's a pretty large, one of my friends here from Austin went to play in the England Open, a pickleball tournament a couple months ago. I know that the size of that tournament has grown every year. Obviously, I think there have been some Asian pickleball tournaments, Indian pickleball tournaments this year, and every one of those, the amount of people there is just absurd. So it's awesome to see that growth from what I've had some meetings with some people working on pickleball travel stuff as well, where Vietnam, again, like the infrastructure and the amount of courts and clubs being built in Vietnam. I think like I think there was a report or data that there might even be more people playing pickleball in Vietnam than there are in the United States already. I don't know,
Wow.
so the Olympics is still on the table, and I think I think paddle might even get the U.S. might be a demonstration sport in 28. There's some conflicts and some consolidation that need to happen from the governing body side in pickleball that are, I wouldn't say conflicts, they're definitely a little bit of a constraint to see pickleball get in the Olympics, but I think that's a goal for everybody. I think will only help, continue the growth of it. I think maybe by 2032, I think we could see pickleball in the Olympics, and that would be awesome if it gets to that point. I mean, could you imagine playing for your country is just, such an incredible thing.
I think it's so cool. And I mean, look at, as wherever the sport goes, we're going to watch, I think this upward trajectory. It's got a ton of momentum and horsepower behind it. And, I just think it's really neat when you get the chance to have these conversations, Brooks, with the folks that put their fingerprint on shaping the industry. And, I can only imagine what that feeling will be like when it's in the Olympics. And, you look back at, shaping one of the leagues, building some of the early technology, helping build some of the courts, and really just being entrenched in this space, man. It's really so powerful, and a privilege to be able to talk to you, man. It's these are conversations that I think as the Profluence team we look forward to, especially as we watch more and more founders coming out shaping new leagues. So from our side, man, thank you for everything you've done from the space. I'll let you have the last word, man. Any parting listener or parting words for our listeners?
No, I'm super thankful to have met you. Shout out to Nick Green, I think, for putting us together.
Yep.
Nick, I honestly did this, like never set out to do this. It happened accidentally. Meeting people, I think a lot of things in life happen that way. And yeah, like am humbled and grateful for the experience that I had doing this stuff. I just view my role as a tiny part of that. Do it because I honestly love sports, love the game of pickleball, now love the game of paddle. So any way I can contribute and, make people's lives better and help out, I'm happy to do it.
Man, Brooks, thank you so much for everything you do. And I told you were going to have the last word, but I lied, because I will leave you guys with this. You guys are all one connection away from your life evolving, elevating, and ultimately finding more fulfillment in it. And that stands true today. Brooks Wiley, great conversation, my friend. Look forward to following your journey. All you listeners, stay tuned, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Scott.